I was trapped in a marriage to a killer, chosen by my own father. But when I uncovered their darkest secrets, I turned the tables and destroyed them both. I used to think my father's word was law. In our house, his voice was the gavel, and his decisions were final. Growing up, I learned early that questioning him was like standing in front of a storm and hoping it would pass you by. It never did. It tore you apart. It was early spring when the storm came for me. I had just turned 21 and was studying literature at the university. My world was small but safe. Lectures, coffee with friends, quiet evenings reading in my room. My father rarely asked about my studies. To him, books were useless unless they contained legal contracts or bank statements. One night at dinner, he cleared his throat in that deliberate way that meant I needed to put down my fork and pay attention. "I've found a suitable match for you," he said flatly, as if announcing the weather. I blinked at him. "A match?" "Yes. A marriage arrangement." His eyes met mine, unreadable. "You'll meet him tomorrow." My mother's hand trembled slightly as she poured water into my glass. She didn't look at me. She never did when my father spoke like this. I looked between them, my stomach knotting. "Father, I'm not." "You will," he cut in, his voice as sharp as the knife beside his plate. "This is not up for debate." The room seemed to shrink. The air thickened until breathing felt like swallowing sand. I knew better than to argue. The next day, I was led into my father's study, where the man he'd chosen was waiting. His name was Kareem al-Hadi, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit. His eyes were an unsettling shade of gray, the kind of color that looked almost lifeless. He smiled, but it was a mechanical thing. Like his mouth knew the shape, but his eyes refused to play along. "My fiancé," he said, as though I were already his. I tried to smile back, but my throat was tight. Something about him made my skin prickle. We exchanged polite words, but I noticed how his gaze lingered a moment too long. Not in admiration, but in ownership. My father watched us like a man surveying property he just purchased. Later, whispers reached me. My friend Layla called late that night. "Do you know who he is?" she asked, her voice shaking. I told her what I knew. His name, his family, his wealth. "That family's dangerous," she said. "People say Kareem's first fiancé drowned in their pool. The second car accident. Both in less than 3 years. Rumors. They had to be. But the way Layla's voice trembled told me she believed them. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking of his lifeless eyes. 2 weeks later, the engagement was official. My father threw a lavish party at our estate, inviting politicians, business partners, and anyone whose handshake could secure his influence. Kareem stayed close to me, his hand resting at the small of my back. A gentle touch in public, but heavy like a shackle. He spoke little, but when he did, it was in short, decisive sentences. Every time someone approached me, his hand would tighten, subtly pulling me closer. At one point, I excused myself to get some air. The garden was dimly lit, the spring air cool. I was halfway down the stone path when I heard footsteps behind me. Kareem's voice was low but firm. "You don't leave without telling me." "I needed air," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He stepped closer. "From now on, you'll let me know where you are. Always." Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. Not a request. Not even concern. It was control. After the guests left, I found my father in his study, sipping whiskey. "Why him?" I asked quietly. He didn't look up from his glass. "Because he's powerful. His family has influence we need. And he knows how to keep a wife in line." I stared at him, my chest tightening. "You mean obedient?" He smirked faintly. "I mean loyal." It hit me then. This wasn't about love or even me. It was about leverage. I was a bargaining chip. The wedding date was set for 1 month later. Everything moved quickly, as if the less time I had to think, the less I could resist. My days were filled with dress fittings, guest lists, and endless advice from my mother, who looked at me with a sadness she never voiced. One evening, I overheard a conversation between my father and Kareem in the next room. You'll find her compliant, my father said. Kareem's laugh was soft and unsettling. If she isn't, she will be. The words slid into me like ice water. The morning of the wedding arrived draped in gold sunlight, but to me, it felt like the sky was mocking me. Everyone else was smiling, bustling through the house, draping flowers over banisters, and setting silver trays of dates and coffee on polished tables. I moved through it all like a ghost, letting the makeup artists and stylists pull and pin me into a porcelain doll. When they finally finished, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Layers of silk and lace, a cascade of pearls at my ears, eyes rimmed with kohl to look bigger, softer. Beautiful, yes, but not me. My father entered without knocking. His eyes scanned me, not with affection, but with the critical gaze of a man inspecting his investment. "You'll make a fine wife," he said, straightening the edge of my veil. "A fine wife for a fine killer." The words slipped out before I could stop them. His gaze hardened, a dangerous flicker crossing his features. "Be careful, daughter. Don't repeat village gossip. It makes you sound small-minded." I wanted to tell him I wasn't small-minded. I was terrified, but fear had no place here. He turned on his heel and left before I could speak again. The ceremony was a blur of golden light and murmured blessings. Kareem stood tall at the altar, dressed in white with a black and gold bisht over his shoulders. He looked the part of a prince from a storybook, if the story was one where the princess never came home. When it was my turn to take his hand, his grip was firm, almost bruising. I smiled for the cameras, but my jaw ached from the effort. He leaned close enough for his breath to warm my ear. "You look perfect," he murmured, "and from now on you're mine." The crowd erupted into applause as the vows were sealed. My mother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, but I couldn't tell if she was happy or mourning me. The reception was opulent, gold-rimmed plates, platters of lamb and rice, crystal glasses filled with rosewater. Guests congratulated us endlessly. Kareem accepted each word with the calm, controlled smile of a man who always gets what he wants. I kept my own smile fixed in place, nodding and thanking people, while my mind churned. At one point, I excused myself to the powder room. The silence inside was a relief, but it lasted only seconds. The door opened, and Kareem stepped in, locking it behind him. "You disappeared," he said. His tone was mild, but there was steel under it. "I needed a moment," I said, my voice tight. He stepped closer, his presence filling the small space. "You don't take moments without me." "Not anymore." I stared at him, my pulse thundering in my ears. "That's not how marriage works." His eyes narrowed, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "In our marriage, it is." That night, after the last guest left and the house was still, we arrived at his estate, a sprawling property on the outskirts of a city. It was beautiful in the way that palaces and fairy tales are beautiful, but its walls felt too high, its windows too dark. He gave me a tour in silence, pointing out rooms with the casual detachment of a museum guide. Then we stopped at a locked door at the end of the east wing. "This room is off limits," he said simply. "What's inside?" "Nothing you need to see." His tone was final, the conversation over. Our bedroom was enormous. High ceilings draped in silk, a bed that could swallow a person whole. Kareem stood at the window for a long time, staring out into the night. I sat at the edge of the bed, the weight of the day pressing on me. Finally, he turned. "You'll learn to trust me," he said. "I don't trust men who lock doors in their own homes," I replied before I could stop myself. For a moment, his expression froze. Then, slowly, the smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You have spirit," he said. "I like that. But spirit can be broken." A shiver ran down my spine. I barely slept that night. Kareem lay beside me, his breathing deep and steady, while my mind replayed every warning I'd heard about him. I thought about the locked door. I thought about the way my father's voice sounded when he said compliant. Somewhere between fear and exhaustion, I made another silent promise to myself. I would find out what was behind that door. And I would find out why 2 women were buried before their time. The first week in Kareem's estate passed in a strange, suffocating routine. breakfast was at 8 sharp, lunch at 1, dinner at 8. He was rarely late, and he expected the same of me. When we were together, he was polite enough in front of staff, but behind closed doors, he was all rules. Where I could go, who I could speak to, what I could wear when we left the house. The locked door in the east wing became an obsession. Every time I passed it, I felt it watching me. Sometimes I thought I heard faint sounds behind it, a muffled thud, like something falling, or maybe someone moving. But whenever I pressed my ear to the wood, the silence was absolute. One afternoon, while Kareem was away on business, I explored the parts of the house he hadn't shown me. The library smelled faintly of dust and old leather, the shelves lined with hundreds of books, many untouched. In a corner, I found a stack of yellowed newspapers bound with twine. Curiosity got the better of me. I untied the bundle and started flipping through them. That's when I found the first article. Prominent businessman's fiancée dies in tragic pool accident. The photo showed a smiling young woman, barely older than me, her arm linked with Kareem's. My stomach nodded. I turned the page and found another. Wife of Kareem al-Hadi killed in car crash, community in shock. The picture this time was different. Kareem looking somber at a funeral, his face partially hidden behind dark sunglasses. 2 women, 2 tragedies, both connected to him. That evening, I tried to act normal at dinner, but my hands trembled slightly as I cut into my food. "You're quiet tonight," Kareem observed. "Just tired," I lied. He studied me for a moment, his eyes searching for something. Then he smiled faintly, as if he'd just confirmed a suspicion. "Good. Rest is important. We have guests tomorrow." The next day, a woman arrived, striking, with long dark hair and sharp cheekbones. She introduced herself as Miriam, Kareem's cousin. Her presence was like a breath of fresh air. She spoke warmly, asked about my family, and even made me laugh. But when Kareem stepped out to take a phone call, her tone shifted. "You're not safe here," she said quietly, leaning in. I froze. "What do you mean?" Her eyes darted toward the doorway. "I can't say much. Just be careful. And whatever you do, stay away from the East Wing." Before I could ask anything else, Kareem returned. Miriam's smile was back in place, her words buried under polite conversation. That night, I dreamed of the locked door. In the dream, I opened it to find a dark room filled with photographs of women, all smiling, all with their eyes scratched out. When I woke, my heart was pounding, but the image clung to me like smoke. Days later, my chance came. Kareem left for a business trip, telling me he'd be gone overnight. I waited until the house was still, then crept to the East Wing. The lock was old-fashioned, but I'd stolen a set of keys from the kitchen drawer earlier that day. The third key worked. The door swung open with a long, low creak. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the curtains drawn tight. Against one wall stood a large desk covered in papers, photographs, and folders. I stepped inside, my pulse racing. The first folder I opened held financial documents, large transfers to overseas accounts, all under false names. Another held photographs of the 2 women from the newspaper articles, along with notes in Kareem's handwriting. Pool, accidental fall, car brakes, failure confirmed. My stomach turned. These weren't tragedies. They were planned. In the corner of the room stood a tall filing cabinet. I pulled open the top drawer. More photos, but not just of the women. There were pictures of me, taken from a distance. In some, I was walking to the university. In others, sitting in cafes with friends. They were all dated, months before I'd even met him. A wave of cold horror washed over me. This marriage hadn't been sudden at all. He'd been watching me, choosing me. I closed the cabinet, my hands shaking. That's when I noticed something else. A small, black leather notebook on the desk. I flipped it open and froze. Inside were lists of names, dates, and short phrases. Layla, pressure point, money owed. Hassan, silence purchased. Father agrees to terms. My eyes locked on the last one. My father's name. He'd been in on this from the start. The sound of footsteps in the hallway jolted me. I shoved the notebook into my dress pocket, closed the folders, and slipped out of the room, locking it behind me. It was only the housekeeper, carrying fresh towels. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking as I hurried back to my room. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Every piece of the puzzle was clicking into place, and the picture it formed was uglier than I had feared. Kareem wasn't just controlling, he was dangerous. And my father had delivered me to him, knowing exactly what he was. The fear that had been eating at me since the engagement hardened into something else. A sharp, cold resolve. I wasn't just going to survive this marriage. I was going to end it. And when I did, I'd take them both down. For 2 days after discovering Kareem's hidden room, I kept my head down. I smiled when he spoke to me, laughed when expected, and never hinted that I knew anything. But inside, my mind was a map of moving pieces, all aligning toward one goal, dismantling the man I'd been forced to marry. The black notebook stayed hidden under the lining of my suitcase, along with a handful of photos I'd stolen from the filing cabinet. I knew they were dangerous to keep, but I couldn't let them out of my sight. They were the first solid proof I had. I decided I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone who could navigate the shadows Kareem moved in, someone who wasn't afraid of powerful men. That's when I remembered Rami, an investigative journalist I'd met once through my university's writing club. He'd written exposés on corrupt businessmen and politicians, and though we hadn't spoken in over a year, I knew he was my best shot. I sent him an encrypted message from a burner phone I bought at a small shop 2 towns over. "It's me. I'm in trouble. Life or death. Can we meet?" He replied within minutes. "When and where?" We met in a quiet cafe far from the city. I wore a scarf over my head and sunglasses, my heart thudding with every passing stranger. When Rami walked in, his eyes widened. "You look like you're running from the law," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "I might be running from something worse," I said. I told him everything. The forced marriage, the locked room, the photos, the notebook. I didn't show him the evidence yet. I needed to know I could trust him. By the time I finished, his expression was deadly serious. "You realize," he said, "if what you're saying is true, this man isn't just a killer. He's connected, which means getting proof is only half the battle. Surviving after you expose him will be the hard part." "I'm aware," I said, "but I'm not leaving until I take him and my father down." Rami agreed to help, but on one condition. "You follow my instructions exactly. One wrong move, and they'll make you disappear like the others." We worked out a plan. I would gather as much evidence as I could without arousing suspicion, while he would dig into Kareem's past, tracing financial trails, speaking to sources, and finding out how deep his father's involvement ran. The next week, I played the part of the dutiful wife while conducting my quiet war. When Kareem left for meetings, I'd slip into the East Wing again, photographing every document I could find. I found bank statements showing massive payments to people whose names I didn't recognize. One stood out, Salem Darwish, listed as receiving monthly consulting fees. I mentioned the name to Rami, and 2 days later he called me. "Salem Darwish is a known fixer," he said. "If someone needs a problem to go,